Someone in your hunter-gatherer band was famous, not for followers, not for a blue check mark, for what they wore, what they made, what they were willing to give away. You'd think status, image, reputation, the whole performance of being seen is a modern disease, something social media invented, something that started with a camera and a comment section. It didn't. 30,000 years ago, in what's now Russia, a group of people did something that took over 10,000 hours of combined labor. Not to survive, not to eat, to decorate a body that was already dead. Let's start there. In 1969, archaeologists digging near the town of Vladimir found two skeletons, a boy and a girl, buried head-to-head in the same grave. They'd been dead for roughly 30,000 years, and they were buried wearing more than 10,000 beads carved from mammoth ivory. Not scattered, not tossed in, sewn row by row into actual clothing. Long-sleeved shirts, trousers connected to shoes, a beaded cap. Each individual bead took roughly 45 minutes to carve by hand. Do the math on 10,000 of them, and you get somewhere north of 10,000 cumulative hours of labor just on ornamentation for two dead children. A nearby adult male at the same site was buried with about 3,000 more ivory beads of his own, ivory armbands, and a mammoth ivory spear laid across his body. Nobody needs a spear in the afterlife. Nobody needs a beaded cap to decompose in. This wasn't survival gear. This was a statement.
And here's the part that should stop you. These people were almost certainly already dying regularly from cold, from infection, from childbirth, from hunting accidents. Every one of those working hours spent carving a bead was an hour not spent hunting, not spent gathering, not spent staying warm. And they spent that time anyway, and purpose, repeatedly. Which means 30,000 years ago, somebody in that group had status specific enough, valued enough, that the entire community was willing to burn an almost unthinkable number of hours, making sure it was visible, even in death. That's not new behavior. That's an old one, wearing very different clothes.
Now here's where it gets interesting, because status like that doesn't usually come from nowhere. It has to be built. And the way it was built, tens of thousands of years before Sungir, tells you exactly where this whole instinct comes from. Go back further, roughly 75,000 years, to a cave on the southern coast of South Africa called Blombos. Inside, archaeologists found small sea snail shells, Neisseria shells, each one deliberately pierced with a hole, the same size in the same spot over and over. Some of them show wear patterns consistent with being strung and rubbed against skin or clothing for a long time. Somebody made these to be worn.
That's not decoration for decoration's sake. A pierced shell worn around your neck in a small group where everyone knows everyone is information. It says something. Maybe I traded with someone from far away. Maybe I have time to spend on things that aren't survival. Maybe pay attention to me. 75,000 years before Instagram, someone had already figured out that a small, deliberately chosen visual object worn on the body could broadcast something about who you were to everyone who saw it. So the beads weren't random, and the effort at Sungir, 30,000 years later, wasn't random either. It was the same instinct, scaled up, once a group had the surplus time and skill to go all in on it.
But status in a small hunter-gatherer band didn't just come from wearing the right shell. It came from something else, something that looks almost backwards from how we usually think about power. Here's the twist. In a lot of small-scale societies, the people with the most status weren't the ones who hoarded the most. They were the ones who gave away the most. Anthropologist Wiessner spent years studying the Juhowansi people of the Kalahari Desert and documented something called Hwatsuro, a long-distance gift exchange system. People would give away tools, beads, ostrich eggshell jewelry, and other valued objects to partners sometimes hundreds of kilometers away, with no immediate expectation of an equal trade back.
On paper, that sounds like a terrible economic strategy. You're giving away your best stuff for nothing guaranteed in return. Except it wasn't nothing. What you got back was a relationship, a safety net, reach. If your local area failed, the water dried up, the animals moved on, you had a Haxaro partner somewhere else who owed you, informally, socially, permanently. Generosity wasn't charity, it was infrastructure. And the people who were best at it, who gave the most, who were known across the widest network, held real, tangible influence. Not because they controlled anyone, but because half the group's safety net ran through them personally. That's a personal brand, built entirely on being generous enough, connected enough, and visible enough that your name meant something to people who'd never even met you.
And it goes even deeper than gift giving, because there's a similar pattern buried inside something as basic as hunting. There's a theory in evolutionary anthropology, sometimes called the show-off hypothesis, built largely on research by Kristen Hawkes. It looks at something that doesn't quite make sense on the surface. In some hunter-gatherer societies, men spend enormous amounts of effort hunting large game, animals that are hard to catch and that get shared with the entire group the moment they're brought down, whether or not the hunter's own family gets a bigger cut. If hunting were purely about feeding your own household, that's an oddly inefficient strategy. Smaller, more reliable food sources would feed your immediate family more consistently.
But if hunting is also a costly, hard-to-fake signal, proof of skill, stamina, and courage broadcast to the entire group at once through a shared meal, then it makes a different kind of sense. You're not just bringing home food, you're publishing your resume in the most public, least fakeable format available. Skill you can't fake, generosity everyone can see, ornamentation that took real time and effort to make. 3 completely different behaviors, all doing the exact same job, telling the group who you are without a single word.
That's the mechanism underneath the term we use today. Researchers who study status in small-scale societies, including anthropologists Joseph Henrich and Francisco Gil White, draw a distinction between 2 totally different kinds of high status. One is dominance, status through force, intimidation, the ability to punish people who don't comply. The other is prestige, status that's freely given by others, because they respect your skill, your knowledge, or your generosity, and want to be near it. Modern influence runs almost entirely on the second kind. Nobody is forced to follow anyone online. Attention gets freely given to the people who seem to know something worth knowing, or who are generous with what they have, or who simply do something impressive enough that other people want to watch.
Swap content for carved ivory beads. Swap engagement for a shared kill everyone remembers. Swap followers for a network of trading partners 300 kilometers wide. The mechanism hasn't changed even slightly. Only the material has. And this is the part that should genuinely unsettle you a little. None of this required writing. None of it required money or cities or anything we'd recognize as an economy. A Paleolithic hunter-gatherer with zero formal education could read social status fluently, instantly, just by glancing at what someone was wearing, what they'd given away, and what they'd killed. You do the exact same thing today, scrolling. You just do it faster, and the beads are pixels.
So when you feel that specific, slightly uncomfortable pull to be seen, to post the trip, to mention the achievement, to make sure people know what you did, that's not a personality flaw invented by an app. That's an instinct that was already fully operational when someone spent 45 minutes carving a single ivory bead, one of 10,000, for a child who would never wear it while alive. Being seen, respected, and talked about by your group was never a modern luxury. For most of human history, it might have been one of the most useful things you could ever be. The platforms changed, the beads changed, the instinct didn't move an inch.
Want to dive deeper into ancient human history? Check out our very first video right here. When did ancient humans start gambling? You'll discover how early humans were placing bets long before modern casinos ever existed. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below. See you in the next story.